following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Mets baseball, past, present, and future. I've got the two best Met podcasters on the internet, Robert Cole and Marty Rose. Start with you, Marty Rose. How are you, sir?
Doing very well, thank you, Ralph. Just got back from Orlando this morning and ready to go tonight with some sad news and some good news, I guess.
Yeah, but the sad news is overpowering. Robert, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, one of the original 1962 Mets, in fact, one of the original starting pitchers in their first starting rotation, Alvin Jackson, passed away today in Port St. Lucie. He had been sick for a while and finally succumbed. He was, what, Marty,
83.
83.
Yeah. 83.
Okay, 83.
Wow.
And I posted on the my website, the Mets from the Polo Grounds to City Field, his first game that he pitched for the Mets against the Pirates that first Saturday of the season. So if anybody's interested, you can listen to that entire game and listen to Bob Murphy say, what, Marty?
Little Alvin Jackson from Waco, Texas, born on Christmas Day, one of 11 children of a retired railroad worker.
And if
he would say that virtually three times a day, 3 times a game when he pitched.
He did.
We went back to the days before Bob Murphy was considered great. He was one of the 3 sprung on us Met fans, Lindsey Nelson, Ralph Kiner, and Bob Murphy. We had been listening to the likes of Red Barber, Mel Allen, Vin Scully, Russ Hodges. We really had some Hall of Fame announcers, besides Phil Rizzuto and Tony Kubek for a while with the Yankees, Jerry Coleman. We were less than impressed at the beginning. He grew into that job.
He did. Well, sure. Lindsey Nelson was a professional. You know, he'd been in the business for a while, and he was pretty well known. And everybody knew Ralph Kiner from his baseball career, but not too many people knew about Bob Murphy at all.
No, and I was a bit surprised living out of New York all those years, not getting to hear him. As people realize, we didn't have the communication, the internet, the devices to listen to, the MLB game of the week. That's all we had.
Right.
So. Things have really changed, and when I look back, all of a sudden, it's 50 years later, this guy's going into the Hall of Fame, and he really is beloved in New York by Mets fans. And I think that was his most famous call, week after week, little Alvin Jackson. And
he said it enough times.
I'll tell you, that pitching staff, they had Craig, they had Jackson. J. Hook was kind of decent.
Can you name the 4th starter for the first part of the season?
Okay.
Ken McKenzie, could
Nope.
that have been? Mulford?
Nope. It was Sherman Roadblock Jones.
Oh, yes, out of the Giants organization, Herb Roadblock Jones. Wow. Then they started to bring in what I call, the cavalry. Ray Dulfer, I'm not pronouncing
Ray Davio.
Right. Davio. Yeah, like I say, Mulford was one of them. The Millers, that was a fascinating story, and I did looking back in Mets memory earlier in the week. Don Demeter hit a home run off both Bob Millers in one game. Bob Righty Miller and both Lefty Miller. And both Righty Miller was traded after the season. Bob Righty Miller was to the Dodgers for two prospects that never panned out, Tim Harkness and Larry Burright. They were supposed to solidify the infield, and they didn't by any stretch. And it turns out that Miller, kind of a swing man, a relief pitcher, starter with the Mets, goes on to, who had success in the majors before, went on to give the Dodgers some pretty good numbers for a somewhat successful career. And that trade, I think, was as bad as any of them. And there were some doozers, as we know. But as far as disappointing, because the second year, when all the fun and joy, and look how cute it is for Thornberry to miss the bases, and Hickman and all those things, by the second year it wasn't that much fun watching them. Do you remember that to be true, guys?
I still enjoyed it. I mean, it was National League Baseball. I was happy to see, Duke Snyder came back that year and had a couple of moments, and, including a walk-off game winner one game. And, I mean, it was baseball. It was not watching the Yankees. So, I was okay.
Yeah, expectations, were not high at all. So, like Robert said, it was baseball. It was our team in New York, and we had to think that it was going to take several years before they would even be halfway decent. Seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
And it did, but boy, did it come on in a hurry. It was several years of really being bad, and then boom, they're good.
Well, yeah, I mean, they took care of their farm system. I mean, they really did. They got lucky, in the Tom Seaver thing, where Seaver had signed elsewhere, and then they said that it was illegal, and then the Mets got put in a hat and drew his name out. So, there was luck there. But, some good deals were made. They had some good young players. Bud Harrelson came up through the system. Ron Swoboda came up through the system.
Right.
Cleon Jones came up through the system. And then, made a couple of good trades. Tommy Agee, Don Clendenin, Jerry Grody.
Yeah, Tug McGraw had come up through the system.
Jerry Kuzman.
Yep. Yeah, McAndrew.
Yeah, so, I mean, you have to give, as bad as they were early, you have to give George Weiss and the first crew some credit, because they're the ones that, got that farm system started.
And I've talked about this before. One of their best hires was Whitey Herzog in player development and coaching. He gets a lot of credit for their success. So.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. Two things I want to mention. First of all, in terms of fan objectivity or lack thereof, I am as guilty as anyone. I realize when I talk to you guys, say there's a player like Lowry who played out here, who I got to watch and overrate in my mind. Panic, a guy who I got to watch and hopefully not overrate in my mind. But if I watch a guy and I start liking him, it's very hard to be objective. Have you found that in your own cases, that you look at guys with fresh eyes when they come from another system or what have you, but you're looking at your own guy. There's certain built-in prejudice as a fan, Marty.
Well, yeah, the homegrown guys always seem to mean more to the fans. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people feel that way. But
okay.
The guys that they pick up along the way that turn out to be key are great. People love them. I mean, Panic's been really good since they got him. And but yeah, you're right though. The homegrown guys seem to have a little extra with the fan base.
Okay, and the one other thing I want to ask you guys about is DeGrom. He's right up there with all-time great Met pitchers. Because you were talking about Seaver a second ago, Robert, and it made me think about it. He's almost surpassed Kuzmin in terms of how I think of the greats. I think Seaver, Gooden, and DeGrom in that order at this point. Am I far off, Robert?
No, I don't think so at all. And he will surpass, if he stays healthy, he will surpass Gooden in overall statistics and everything. I mean, we all remember Gooden for those couple of phenomenal years, and and DeGrom, I think is every bit as good. He just hasn't had the one loss numbers, basically because of the team that he's on right now. But he's actually put himself back into the Cy Young talk again for this year.
Ralph, did you see the stat that somebody came out with yesterday? I think I know Robert saw it.
Yes.
Out of 163 career starts for DeGrom, he's given up 1 or 0 runs 74 times.
Holy shit.
Can you imagine? And the lack of support is just incredible. Otherwise, he'd be winning 20 games all the time, Shit.
Yeah, he should be. Fortunately, the voters now look at things differently. I mean, baseball has changed tremendously. So, I was watching MLB. Was it earlier today? The network, and he's right back. In the top 4 in the Cy Young consideration again.
Well, to do that in an age, that's incredible stats, Marty. To do it in an age this many home runs, Scott Russell in his Facebook writings today listed all of the players who are on track for like 40 home runs this year, and it's amazing, to coin a term. We're definitely seeing different ball than we grew up with, and I guess there's something to be gleaned from it. There's certainly better defense going on, infield defense, outfield defense, than we ever saw, if you'll exclude the fundamentals. If you look at the incredible plays that you see at third base, for instance, Arenado over Chapman, these guys make plays that make Brooks Robinson and Clete Boyer that are reminiscent of those guys on a regular basis. So the defense has improved. The skills have improved. Not the skills, the talent has improved. The skills, the fundamentals aren't the same as when we were kids, but it's still baseball, and you love it for You love it for the memories. You just love the atmosphere. You go out there with the green grass and all that, and it's just our sport. But to watch some of it go down negatively in terms of the rules changes, which we'll get into, the prospective rule changes, we'll get into those on another show when we have some more time. But it's the name of the game has changed. The name of life is changed and adjusting to different stuff. So baseball's no different. I will just ask you guys, is baseball a microcosm of life, or is life a microcosm of baseball?
Which came first, chicken or the egg?
Right. Well, it's all scrambled now. Remember the Odd Couple. Is this spaghetti or is this linguine? And he throws it up against the wall. He says, now it's garbage.
Yes, exactly. That's true.
All right.
I remember that.
So, guys, I'm going to throw it to you to wax poetic about the recent Mets streak, how they put themselves in a position, what is it, 3 games over 500?
I think so.
I think it's 4. Isn't it 4 over 500?
It could very well be, but it's not less than 3. And here we are in August, looking back.
Still in 4th place, though.
Yeah.
So and the schedule upcoming is brutal, to say the least.
Well, now we'll
Very
find out.
tough. Yes, we will.
Find out,
We'll find out if they deserve to do that.
Let me tell you something. I'm sure the teams that are playing them are thinking, we've got to come up against 5 solid starters. And the Mets are not patsies. So I want you both, if you would, to tell me the reasons you think that they can win and go back and forth, and then think of some of the reasons that you have to be, as you say, pragmatic, schedule's brutal, looking at it realistically, but first dream a little bit. Start with you, Robert, and guys, go at it.
Oh, well, this strong point, which we've been looking for 2 years, is the starting pitching. And they actually have 5 good starting pitchers now. It's hard to imagine them going into a big losing streak, with these 5 guys. And you can imagine them going on another winning streak with these same 5 guys. The downside, I think, is injuries, and injuries are starting to catch up with them. So, that's the thing that could derail them. What do you think, Marty?
Yeah, I agree. That starting pitching, these guys got to go 7 innings. They just have to go 7 innings because of the problems we've had out in the bullpen. But if McNeil comes back healthy, and the way Rosario has been hitting lately, which is quite a surprise to me, since they moved him up toward the top of the lineup, he's been tearing it up. He's been very good. I don't know if he's playing over his head or this is the real guy. We'll find out. Conforto's been doing well. Ramos is hitting. It would be nice to get Nimmo back. He's rehabbing. He's played 2 games so far in St. Lucie. I haven't heard about any problems.
Excuse me, have you guys heard about J.D. Davis? He pulled something the other day, and I never did get a follow-up report.
Okay, he hurt himself the other day. Okay, everything seemed to be okay. Yesterday he went into the game. He was rounding third, and he pulled up. And they came out to talk to him. Mickey took him out of the game. After the game, J.D. Davis said that he was fine. and could have stayed in, but Mickey wanted to take him out for precautionary reasons. I heard nothing since then, so hopefully he'll be ready to go tomorrow.
Yes. I think so, because after the off day today, he should be ready to go tomorrow. Yeah.
Good. They can ill afford to lose him, and he has to go down as one of the biggest surprises going.
Well,
definitely.
Okay, yeah. A couple of pluses you have to give Brody. Okay, because we give him a lot of minuses, and he deserves them. But picking up J.D. Davis was a big one. Allowing Alonso to start the season with the team was a big one.
Yes, they gave up a little team time or whatever it is, whatever they call it, to him, so they'll probably be on the hook to lose him earlier unless they extend him. If they decide not to extend him, they'll run the Wilpons out with Brody on the back of a truck.
Got to give him credit for Ramos too. He's been good.
Yes, he has. I mean, Ramos is the guy that I saw last year with Tampa Bay, and remember Ralph kept asking me about him. I kept saying, "Oh, this guy's good. This guy's good." And then he started out, and it was like, what happened? But
yeah, we just have to remember some guys get good after it gets warm and hot and things heat up. This is a big guy with some thick muscles. As
long as he hits it in the air, he's okay. You stay away from those ground balls. He's about the slowest runner I've ever seen.
And then the other thing to be happy about right now is the bullpen for the most part. Since Avalon and Wilson came back, they've been good. Lugo, other than that one meltdown in Atlanta, has been good. He came back again the other day. So, and this guy Brad Brock that they picked up seems to be okay right now too. So I've been impressed with him.
Okay.
Yeah, so far, yeah, true.
Okay, not to look at it as being negative. Let's just look at it, like I say, as being pragmatic. What's looming out there that can bring them down? Marty, start with you.
Well, I think the competition the next couple of weeks is very, very tough. I mean, the Indians are really good, and they just got done playing the Yankees, and they beat them 2 out of 3. Then Washington's coming in, very big series with them, and then they have the Cubs after that. So they have their work cut out, but I think on the last homestand, I think the fans really pulled them together. They were so loud. I mean, I don't remember hearing them that loud for probably since, 2015? They were, maybe so. They were really loud. So, I mean, that's a big factor. Bigger than maybe we give credit for. Yeah. So, we'll see.
And, they played well, decently against the Braves. Lugo had the meltdown. They didn't let that get them down. They came back and had the big, third game against the Braves. I think they proved to themselves they can play with the Braves. Washington, they always play tough. Those are really, tense, rough games. And then
they have guys that beat us. It seems like every day. Robles is one.
Right.
The shortstop Tate Turner.
Turner's another.
Yeah. For a while.
I think Atlanta comes in after Cleveland. Isn't that true? Or is it Washington? Oh, it is Atlanta. Yeah, that's what. Okay. Yeah, so get right back with them.
Yeah.
That'll be good. All right.
Yeah, if you take 2 out of 3 from Atlanta, like I said last week before they started playing the Braves, if you can come out with a split, 3-3, you feel pretty good about yourself. And then when they play the Cubs, don't forget, the Cubs have been struggling. The Cubs are in the wild card spot now, not in first place anymore. And the Mets will be battling them right now for a wild card. So, I mean, there's a lot on the line, for the Mets as well. So, should be interesting.
Should be an interesting week indeed. Hey, guys, before we go, and I thought about this week, it was today or yesterday that was the anniversary of the New York Giants in 1957 announcing, and they broke league policy by announcing a move before the World Series. They announced the move that the board of directors voted to move to San Francisco on this date, and the only dissenting vote was that of M. Donald Grant. And if I remember correctly, he was voting on behalf of Joan Payson.
Yes, he was.
At that time. But he was on the board of directors of the Giants, and that move, of course, of the Giants and Dodgers made way for the Mets. But before that, we lived for 5 years without National League Baseball. It was horrible in New York. And Branch Rickey had proposed they're putting together what they called the Continental League, made up of cities, big cities, like New York, Houston is an example.
Denver, Toronto, yeah.
Right. All of whom have big league teams at this point.
And they had big money backing them too.
Yes.
Right.
Like Jack Kent Cook and Bob Housen.
They forced the issue of expansion. So I'd like either of you to talk about Branch Rickey a little bit, how that came to be. Start with Robert.
Yeah, actually, Bill Shea was the originator of the Continental League. Shea was asked by Mayor Wagner to spearhead a group to see if they could get a National League team into New York City. Of course, Walter O'Malley had already made a deal with the American League that he would block any other National League team from coming into New York City. In return, the American League agreed not to put a team in Los Angeles. And that was done, and then Shea couldn't do anything with any National League teams, so he started looking around to form a league. Okay, Branch Rickey was brought into it. Branch Rickey went to work, got some, as Marty said, some big money men involved, some big cities involved, and he was not trying to become an opponent of the National League and American League. He wanted to become a third component of the major leagues. Some people think he was coming in like the American Football League did or the American Basketball Association was, and he was not. He wanted to get started. He wasn't going to compete for players. He felt that there were plenty of players out there. A lot of the Pacific Coast League players were guys that were in the majors or could have been in the majors, but there were very few jobs available. And so he wanted to start a third league. The last thing Walter O'Malley wanted was Branch Rickey being back in baseball. Okay, Walter O'Malley's whole plan was to make people forget Branch Rickey, forget the Brooklyn Dodgers, forget about National League Baseball in New York. And the last thing he wanted was Branch Rickey to have a league which was headquartered in New York City. So he had to, eat his hat, and they had to agree to put a team in New York City in the National League. As soon as that happened, the American League immediately voted to expand in '61 and put a team in Los Angeles. And that's how that all came about. Ricky was disappointed when, the Continental League fell apart, because those owners then started to see Houston was going to be brought in. There was going to be a team in Los Angeles, a team in Minnesota, so the Continental League kind of fell apart. But he had every intention of having a third equal major league.
He definitely forced the issue. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Probably enraged O'Malley by doing that too, because he forced Ricky out in 1950, and Ricky came back and had the last laugh.
Now, Ricky had another last laugh when he went to the Pirates and stole Roberto Clemente from the Dodgers.
Well, Ricky had a couple of last laughs. When he decided that he was going to sell his share of the team in the Dodgers back in 1950, Walter O'Malley said, "Sure, I'll buy your share," and O'Malley offered him the same amount that he bought in with, which was roughly $250,000. Okay. Well, Ricky turned around and, according to their partnership agreement, he could go out and get a fair market offer from somebody, and he did. One of John Galbraith's fraternity brothers was a big real estate guy in New York. I forget the guy's name, starts with a Z. And he agreed to buy the share, Ricky's share, for $1 million. And O'Malley was beside himself. He thought for sure it was a put-up deal, and that it wasn't an honest deal, but he couldn't take that chance. This guy Zeckendorf, his name is William Zeckendorf, and Zeckendorf put up good front money, $50,000, and part of the contract was that if the owners took Ricky up on his offer, they had to pay a good faith money back to Zeckendorf, and they gave Zeckendorf a $50,000 check. Well, when that check cleared in O'Malley's bank account, it was co-signed by Ricky. Zeckendorf gave that $50,000 back to Ricky, so Ricky actually got $1,050,000 from O'Malley, and made O'Malley absolutely crazy. And anytime anybody in the Brooklyn Dodger front office said the name Brad Trickey, they got fined $1 and had to put it in a jar.
All right. Now, one other thing I wanted to ask you, experts and you two great memory guys, there seems to be in the corner of my mind a memory of the National League trying to get both Pittsburgh and Cincinnati to move during those years. Does that ring true, Marty? Do you remember that at all?
I think so. They did ask them to move to New York, and they both obviously turned it down.
Right.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought they were going to come close with Pittsburgh.
Well, actually, when that announcement, May 15th, 1957, the National League had a special meeting, and the meeting was to okay the move of the Dodgers and Giants if they so asked for it. And in the newspapers, it was being speculated in all the sports sections that the Cincinnati Reds were going to ask at that same time to be allowed to move to New York. And
it was Cincinnati.
It was Cincinnati, yes. And, so the meeting happened. They came out, they made the announcement, and one of the writers said, well, what about Cincinnati? And they vehemently denied that Cincinnati had asked for permission to move, that they were very happy in Cincinnati. They were working on a new ballpark in Cincinnati and all that. Basically what happened behind the scenes was that O'Malley was not going to allow a National League team to move into New York. And in those days, the National League bylaws stated that every other team had to vote in favor of a team moving. And all he needed was, one vote. It could have been his own. He could have had somebody else do the vote, because the year previous, in '56, Horace Stoneham asked for permission at the winter meetings to move to Minneapolis, okay, where his farm team was, and that would have been the smart thing to do. O'Malley talked to the Philadelphia Phillies and asked them to say no. And Philadelphia said, no, well, we didn't think it was a good move at this time, and so that was turned down. O'Malley already knew what his plan was, and that was he's going to L.A., and he wanted the Dodgers to come with him. So,
right.
He had, the Phillies say no, and then, Horace was stuck holding the bag, and then, Walter said, boy, do I have a deal for you, Horace. And there you go.
Well, give me some clarification. Marty might remember the T-shirt that I wore to the Y when we were 10, and it was the Minneapolis Giants.
Oh,
they were all but gone to Minneapolis, and from my understanding, Horace had the territorial rights on one side, but the Giants owned territorial rights on the other side. I thought it was Horace owning territorial rights to St. Paul.
No, Horace had Minneapolis. The Dodgers had St. Paul.
Who had St. Paul? I'm sorry.
The Dodgers.
Oh, Horace, yes. Horace had Minneapolis, and was he able to quelch it? O'Malley quelched that deal based on him owning St. Paul? Owning the territory?
No, it was just there were two separate areas, okay? Minneapolis, Horace could have gone to Minneapolis if he had gotten the votes. Of course, having St. Paul and Minneapolis together, as the Minnesota Twins do, would have been the ideal thing.
But I heard that O'Malley couldn't move because the trip out there wouldn't be economical. If a National League team goes out to play the Dodgers, and only the Dodgers, there's just too much flight time. So having the Giants, not only did it keep the rivalry going, which was at one time made the Boston Yankee rivalry pale by comparison to importance and what have you. It was just the greatest rivalry in baseball history, the Giants and Dodgers. But it kept it together on the West Coast, and it took a while for the Giants for everything to turn out. But they are and have been in a beautiful gem of a ballpark for 20 years now. My God, does time fly.
At the expense of us down here in Tampa, St. Pete.
Yes, yes.
Tampa, St. Pete actually had a sale. They had bought the Giants.
And who quelched it, if you guys remember?
Okay, well, it was a double thing, okay? Bill White, the National League president, and Peter O'Malley, then running the Dodgers. Bill White was against it because he felt, St. Pete held him and other black ball players back when the Cardinals, the Yankees, both were in St. Pete, training, and he had made a vow that he would never let a major league team, National League team, go into the St. Pete area. And Peter O'Malley came out and said that we couldn't let the fans of San Francisco be disappointed by letting the Giants move to another city. Okay, I mean, his father had no problem doing that to Brooklyn, but he felt that he owed it to San Francisco.
Yeah, so loyal. Isn't that nice?
So it was a double-barrel thing at that time. I still, somewhere in my belongings, I still have a receipt for a seat that we were asked to, put in. We actually made deposits before they quelched that deal.
Whoa, like a season ticket holder type thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Whoa.
Me and another friend of mine, we had to, I think, make a $50 deposit or something. We each put in $25. But yeah, I mean, they'd already started, selling tickets and all that good stuff. Not tickets, but reservations.
Yeah. Wow. Look back in history. Thank you, guys. Terrific show as usual.
Okay, Ralph. Good talking.
We'll do it again
See you next week.
Do it next
All
week.
right.
Yes.
Take care of yourselves. Come back safe and healthy. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm the weak link, but Marty Rose and Robert Cole are certainly superstars. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Let's go, Mets. Adios.
Good night.
Good night.